Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
We are going to continue our discussion currently as we were, which is the treatment of grayscale images in Quark Express, as long as your picture is saved as a grayscale TIFF in Adobe Photoshop. Then Quark Express in particular gives you a great flexibility of representing that image, and I want to continue that discussion right now. For the purposes of this particular discussion, I want to open just a new project. I don't want to work anymore on the book that I was using earlier. I will just open a new project, a single page document, as you can see on my screen, and I can even choose the prefixed A4 size, and I open a landscape document because I want to show you certain effects that are possible with a grayscale picture. Now here I draw a picture box, and in that picture box I do Command E or Control E, and I bring in my grayscale photo. You will remember we had saved this photograph as a grayscale TIFF, which means Photoshop understands that when this picture is going to be printed, the only ink that will be required is a black, and if there are shades in the picture, then those shades of gray can also be represented using shades of the black ink. So in fact, black and shades of black, they all come from the same colored ink. You can still have interesting visual treatments just using a single color printing, where the printing press just needs one. It's often a cheaper option. Now here, I want you to notice something on your screen. My color palette is open on the side. For the purposes of this demonstration, I want to show you, this is the bumblebee that I have. I want to make it just a little smaller. I can automatically affect both the box and the content if I press Shift, Alt and Control. The minute you press Shift, Alt and Control and you push or pull on the boxes, they will automatically become bigger or smaller along with the content. Now I copy paste this box and I place it beside this, but in this box I actually want to bring a different picture, and I do, as you can, if you remember, I do Command or Control E and I bring in a colored picture. This colored picture, if you see on my screen, you can notice the extension of the colored picture is showing up as .webp or .webpage. Quark does not recognize .webp, so this is immediately a warning. I must come out of this. I'll say cancel and I minimize my Quark file and I come to the desktop and I locate this .webp picture. I double click on it twice, and as you can see, it's not opening up in Photoshop. It's opening up in a program in my computer called Preview. So I close it and I right click on it and I say, please open this with some other application. And then it says, what do you want to open it with? And I say, I want to open it with Adobe Photoshop. This might happen to you sometimes with your downloaded images, so be aware of what you need to do. I go to Image, I go to Mode, and I save as CMYK, and then I go to Image and I come down to image size and I can see that it is 72, but I know it must become 300, so we resize the image, and now I do a Save As and I say, let me save this as Butterfly 2, and I save it on my desktop. TIFF is already selected, that's great, and I say Save. Right, now I go back to, I close this file in Photoshop and I go back to my Quark file. Here I try and bring the colored image, and you will notice on my screen the difference is already visible, which is that the web page image is not showing up for selection by Quark Express, but the TIFF file is. So I select it and I say open. And now here is the colored image in the box. If I want, I can stretch it open to fill the box, right? The picture handles are active. Please note this place. I'm going to magnify it with my magnifying tool. The square handles are the handles of the box. With this, I can make the box itself smaller or bigger. But when I double click on a picture box, I get these round handles. These are the picture handles. So please be aware when dealing with images that you can either increase or decrease the picture within a box. You can increase or decrease the box itself, right? Suppose I only want this much to show or this much to show or whatever, in which case you activate the square handles. And if you press Shift, Alt and Control and close it entirely or try to open it entirely, you affect box and image together. So whenever you are designing or you are working with pictures, keep in mind whether you want to affect the box, the picture inside the box, or both objects at one and the same time. The reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this is I want to explain a very big difference between grayscale and CMYK images in Quark Express. When I click on this, this is a CMYK TIFF in my Photoshop. And this on the left hand side is a grayscale TIFF in Photoshop. Right? There is a difference in the color mode. The DPI is 300 throughout. The DPI is not negotiable. It must be 300. Now, when I click on the CMYK TIFF file, if you look on top of the color palette, you will notice that I have three options of interaction. I have a box called, this box is called background color. In Quark, background color means it is simply the color of the box. What do I mean by that? Suppose the picture was not filling the box. Suppose I wanted the picture like this and I wanted the box open on all four sides as a frame. Then you can see by default the picture box is white. However, I could, if I wanted, change the color of the box. Alright, this is the option that is accessible from this first option on your color palette that shows the background of the picture. Usually it is set to white, so it will look like this, but you can put any color. I have just put yellow, I can put cyan, which is the blue option, I can have magenta, I can have black, etc. Right? This is one option. The second option is the picture itself. Now we are discussing not the box or the area around the picture, we are discussing the picture itself. Various options are available for the picture. These options, however, I must warn you, the options for picture that are available are best applied when there is one picture on top of another, because these various almost Photoshop-like filters or options that Quark gives you, they only make sense when you can sort of see through the effects of one picture into another picture. Just on their own, they often don't make sense. I will show you what I mean. The minute I choose multiply, you can't see anything. Then I choose screen, it doesn't really make much sense. Overlay, something happens, it gets very much darker, darken, lighten, right? So just a picture on its own, applying these doesn't make sense, but this is what is available to you as an option. The only thing that you can do to colored pictures is you can affect again their opacity. You will remember this from our previous lecture where I was turning a circle into shades of grey. Opacity means how transparent or not transparent is your picture. The last option on the color palette is the border option. The border in any box, and you can apply a border to any kind of box. You can put a border to a text box, You can put a border to a picture box. This border can be activated from the bottom of the screen. You first have to go to the border tab at the bottom of the screen. Then you have to choose a thickness for your border. There are some prefixed thicknesses over here. So let's say 4 point, if we choose 4 over here, and you can't see the border because the default border color is black. You come back to the color palette and let me choose cyan, and immediately you can see the border for this picture. You can make the border as big or as small or as thick or as wide as you want to. From here on the color palette, you can change the color of the border. You can make it a shade of the color that you want. You can also change the option of the line. You can have a dotted line border. You can have a dash dotted line border. You can have fun with this, right? Quark has some prefixed options and you can choose these. So, as far as a colored picture is concerned, you can change the background, you can give it a border, you may or may not decide to affect the opacity of the picture, and you may or may not decide to put some of those prefixed options like screen, multiply, etc., etc. Bear in mind that those make more sense when there is one image on top of another image. If you have a solo image like I do, then that doesn't really make much sense. Now, when I click on the grayscale picture, if you on the bumblebee, if you look at my color palette, you will notice that there are 4 options now on the top of the screen. This is the primary difference between the two objects. This now has given me 4 options and I want to see what those 4 options are. Bear in mind that for these 4 options to be activated, your picture must be saved as a grayscale in Photoshop. The first is like the color image, so you can change the box color. In this case, I make it magenta, just as we had done over here. The second is now a very interesting option. The second, if you see on the screen, the mouse will show you that it is something called picture background. Picture background means that which is white in the picture. I have just changed the white area to yellow. Okay? The next one is the picture color, which we had discussed earlier in our lecture, and I had told you that Quark is capable of reading the picture background as a white area, and it is capable of reading the picture itself, which is everything that is black. You can just bring a grayscale TIFF into Quark Express, and first of all, you can make it a transparency because you can knock off all that is white by saying none to picture background. And now to the picture itself. What is great fun, I can leave it black as it is, or even this I can change. Did you see the wondrous thing that happened? From one grayscale, it is therefore possible for me to get a variety of colored options in Quark Express. The same black and white picture of the bee, I can come into Quark Express, I can have a blue, I can have a green, I can have a yellow, whatever color, because Quark reads the black portion of a grayscale image and Quark can change it to the color of my choice, as I have done here. The fourth option is in common with the CMYK box. It lets me put a border, and here I can come again like I did, and I can either choose a prefixed border size. I can go with 8 point, and I can choose any of these options that I can choose. Let's see if we choose thin, thick. Let's see what happens. And there you can see a thick line and a thin line border. And once again, I can change the color, right? So, limited changes available to the color image, many more options available to the black and white image. If I want, I can knock off the yellow as well on the bumblebee, and I am left with a beautiful blue bee in the middle of this box. Another interesting thing, now you can imagine if the box of the bumblebee has no border. So, I come to my border and I come to the bottom of the page and I say 0, done. Then there is no border. Basically, if you turn to 0, the border will disappear. I come back to my color palette and I choose none. and there is no box color, no background color, nothing. I make this box a little smaller just to show you what is possible with now grayscale and TIFF CMYK combination. And I bring this bumblebee, whoops, can you see what's happening? The bumblebee is going to the back. So I stop here, I do right click on the bumblebee and I say, I come to this option that says send and bring, and I say bring forward, and the bumblebee now is on top, which is the way I want it for this experiment that I am about to show you. So I have one picture, on that I can put another picture, a grayscale picture. That grayscale picture will appear as a transparency. All the white has gone. Can you see the possibility then of having image on top of image and creating a whole different image altogether? Righto, this is where the black bumblebee is. On this, if I now wish to get really experimental, maybe I can put yellow, and here I can now have fun. Let's see if we do multiply. Can you see what happened? It changed color. Let's try the screen option. It gives me another look. Can you see the fun that's happening here? Some parts are staying white, some parts of it are becoming yellow and see-through when I move it on the flower. So that's a special effect that's come in. Let's try overlay. Another effect, now the body is looking green, and other interesting effects are happening when it is moving over the flowered portion, and so on. We can go down this entire palette, choosing one at a time, depending on what we are designing and what kind of color option we would like to work with. So it's very difficult to tell you this looks best or that looks best, because really it depends on what you're doing, what your color scheme is, you know, what the visual treatment is going to be. But as I had told you before, if you want to use any of these options, you must make sure there is one picture on top of another picture. And one great way to arrive at interesting designs is to work with a variety of images like this. Some of your images are CMYK TIFF files, some of your images are grayscale, and you can then play around with them, putting one on top of the other and having fun. You can always just locally make your grayscale a transparency. If you look at my color palette, the two ways in which to make it a transparency are background none and picture background. There are two backgrounds. One is the box color, the background of the box, and one is that which is white in your picture, which is the picture background. They are white by default. You can always knock that to none and you will have a transparency. And don't forget, all that is black in the photo can also actually be changed to any color of your choice, right? Depending on your design, as you can see, if I put the bumblebee here, I can even change all that was black to white. This also gives me a wonderfully interesting look. I can now even affect opacity of the white. If I think the full white is looking very stark, I can pull down the opacity and have a more gentle bumblebee effect sitting on the picture like this, and so on. Now, I want to show you yet another special effect, which is how do we try to achieve a transparency with a colored image. So I will minimize this and I will reopen the second butterfly picture that I was working with earlier. It has been reopened in Adobe Photoshop. I will go to the magic wand over here. Actually, I beg your pardon, I need the magic eraser. Behind the regular eraser, there are two options in Photoshop if you're looking at the left of the screen. All these, whenever you see a tool in Quark Express or in Photoshop and it has a tiny little white triangle at the lower bottom, you realize that tiny little triangle is indicating if you long press that tool, you get access to more tools. There are more options of that tool that are tucked behind that one. So if I long press on the eraser tool, I arrive at something called the magic eraser. The magic eraser is capable of deleting all the pixels of the same color. You have realized that Photoshop analyzes a picture in the shape of tiny little dots, which are called pixels, and the magic eraser says, I am an eraser, but I'm magical. And how am I magical? I am magical that I can identify every single pixel's color. So, if you click on one pixel with me, I will automatically erase all the other pixels that have the same color. And so, with one click, I have got rid of the sky. There's no sky here. Even between the butterfly's legs, I am deleting all the bits of blue, right? Now, this is very important. Once you have done this, in some cases, you need to magnify. I can see a little bit of blue tucked over here. I need to magnify and bring the magic eraser close. As you can see, here we go. I'm trying to get rid of this little bit of blue. In some cases, I need to go back to the regular eraser, right? This is a regular eraser. The two square brackets on your screen help make the eraser bigger or smaller, okay? The square brackets help make the eraser bigger or smaller. You must always work with magnification, and sometimes with the regular eraser, this is still too big. You need to make it smaller, and you need to be then working right along. Can you see how small that eraser is? You need to work and erase right along the edge. I'm not doing it very well because I'm working on my laptop, but you get the picture. I'm removing all these little bits of blue, right? So, sometimes the magic eraser gets rid of the bulk of the picture, but then you need to sit with the eraser tool. You really need to magnify the image, and you need to cut it out cleanly, all the blue very, very gently, very up close, because all of these jagged pixels, can you see what I meant by pixels now? You can see these little squares. All of these jagged pixels are going to show up in your Quark file, and the cutout will not look professional, right? So, for the time being, I have made what I call a cutout, which means in a colored image, I have cut out a part of that picture from other bits. The trick now, as you will notice on top, Photoshop says layer. The trick now is we cannot save this anymore as a TIFF. So, I go to File and I say Save As. And now, the file can remain the same, the name. I come to Format and I choose as my option Photoshop. The minute I say Photoshop, if you're looking at the file name at the top of the page, you will notice that the extension, the file extension has become .psd. .psd stands for Photoshop document. I save it as a Photoshop document on my desktop. I close this, and now when I reopen my file, you will see if I bring in here, in the same box, I am bringing in the file called butterfly PSD, and now can you see the magical thing that happened? All the blue sky has disappeared. I have cut the butterfly and the flower out of the blue sky, and because I saved it as a PSD, it has come in like this. Now, if I want, give a full color, and I can have an effect like this, right? Just this element has been cut out. Maybe for whatever reason I didn't like the blue, I can work with the image like this. But please be aware that such a cutout must in fact be a PSD. Now I can have a lot of fun if on this also I want to bring the B. To the B I can say I want to apply all of these interesting or some of these interesting effects. Can you already see my design changing? The B can be blue and so on and so forth, right? So I have three. This is giving some other kind of a look over here, right, while it's going onto the PSD. So I have just now taught you that your first option is a grayscale TIFF. The second image option is a CMYK TIFF. There is now a third image option, which is a CMYK PSD file, right? The grayscale does not have to be turned into a PSD. In a grayscale file, when you bring it into Quark Express, when you change to none the picture background and the box background, it automatically functions as a PSD. The grayscale TIFF becomes transparent, only the black part remains, all the white disappears. So, if you're working with a grayscale picture, You don't have to, waste a lot of time in Photoshop erasing all the white and so on. You just save as a grayscale TIFF, you bring it into Quark and you knock off the picture background and the box background. But if in a colored image, you only want to pull out a part of the picture, right? Then you have to sit, you have to magnify the image, you have to use a combination of the magic eraser and the regular eraser and get rid of all the stuff around the portion that you want. You have to make it using the magic eraser helps establish transparency in Photoshop, and then you bring it in. But remember the last step, which is save as format Photoshop. You'll know you've got it correct if the file extension changes to .psd, right? So in Quark, you therefore have the possibility of working with 3 such file extensions, okay? Grayscale, CMYK TIFF, which is a flat picture, and CMYK PSD, which is a cutout. Now, there is one other significant option here that I must make you aware of, which is because we are in a print document, because this document will ultimately be printed, it is showing you the CMYK palette in the colors. You have 2 ways of introducing more colors. The first is if you go back to the color palette and you press the plus sign, it will open up the color wheel as you can see on my screen. I don't want to stay in the RGB mode, even if it is there by mistake, so I would recommend you click CMYK. And you will notice immediately here CMYK has popped up, so that any color that I create now by moving this little black point all over this color wheel, any color that I create will be interpreted in terms of the 4 printing inks. You can choose any color you want. If you want to make it darker, you can pull down this bar on the side. Can you see the shade of green becoming darker? If you stay close to the white in the middle, you get pastel shades, okay? Here are the colors that you can choose, whatever you want. Once you have chosen a color, stop moving around and just say OK. And you will notice here on the side now, we have a new green color. If you want to see in this box, we can even apply the new green color, and this is what it looks like. Needless to say, this color can be made darker or lighter depending on what you want to design. This is one way of adding a color. Another way of adding a color is if I press the plus sign and behind, if I press this arrow where it says CMYK, there's a whole big long list of color albums over here. If you are designing for the internet later, at the bottom you can see web named colors or web safe colors. Now usually you should be a little careful of using these albums, and I rarely use these color albums because they refer to very specific companies and color codes of inks, very much like how we have nail polish colors by different companies. In America, in the UK, sometimes in places perhaps in China, very, very sophisticated printing presses can buy these very specific inks and then put them on the machine in order to print your document. But in India, often these prints are either not available, these paints, these printing inks are often not available, or they are very expensive. So the colors might look beautiful to you, but when you send them for printing, the printer is unable to understand these colors, these codes, these numbers. So I would recommend that you stick to CMYK. You stick to making your own colors. You can always look at a color and then try to replicate that color here. I find that that is wonderful training for the eye. I can look at a color in a book. I can look at a color on a sari or somebody's shirt or even on a car or a pair of shoes. And as long as I've got an image of it, maybe I took a photo of it on my phone, I can open up that image, and if I like that color combination, I can use the color wheel the next time I'm designing to replicate that color combination. Maybe there will be a little difference, but you will see in time, as you do this more and more often, you will be able to come very close and if not arrive at the exact color that you have on what I would call your color swatch or the screenshot that you are carrying around as a sample. So, get used to using the CMYK color wheel. The second more useful method of arriving at colors, in fact, Quark has done for you, which is, if you look at the bottom of your color palette, you will notice that there is a little eyedropper. Now, you must be careful because there is an eyedropper here as well, right? There is an eyedropper on the toolbar, but that we do not want to do right now. We are concerned with color, so we stick to the picker. It's called I call it the eyedropper tool because it looks like sometimes if you've ever had an ear infection or an eye infection, or at least in my childhood, the eye drops or the ear drops would come in a little glass bottle and the cap of it would actually have an eyedropper like this, and you could squeeze it, pick some up, and then you put the drops in your eye. We didn't have the little plastic bottles that are now available. You can make a hole in the mouth of the bottle and use that directly. We would have these glass droppers which look like this. We would also have the same glass droppers, at least again in my childhood, which we used to fill ink in fountain pens. You would use the dropper in the ink bottle, fill it with ink, and then you filled your fountain pen with it. So, the color picker tool is the one that we want from the color palette, and you come to your color image and you just click on the colors in the image that you like. Did you see what I just did? I clicked on the yellow heart of the flower, I clicked on the green of the stem, I clicked on this darker pink of the petal, I clicked on the other pink in the petal, and I click on this orangish shade in the butterfly's wing. And if you will notice, all of these colors are showing up now here at the bottom like a little, like little samples of paints, okay? And I can then just double click on each of them. I double click on this color, it just shows me that it's a CMYK color, and I say OK. The minute I say OK, it gets added to my color palette. I click on the next one and I get the green of the stem, again OK, right? The third color, OK. This is the magenta of the flower petal, it's such a lovely shade, I say OK, and this is the orange from the butterfly's wing, and again I say OK. And now if I want the entire design, I can in fact use all the colors that I have got from my color picker at the bottom. I don't even need to worry. So if I'm working with a color image, often when I'm working with the CMYK TIFF, even if I've made a cutout of it, what I do is I just use the color picker on the color palette and I choose a variety of colors, but from that very picture. So I don't have to worry about bringing in another color. Is that color going to work? There's already a green in the picture. Do I need to find another shade of green? What kind of contrast should I use for the lettering? I'm very confused. It's such a brightly colored picture to begin with. What more colors can I add? Remember, too many colors, too many types, it kind of blinds the reader, right? They don't know what to look at. Too many bits of information are coming to them. So one way of keeping a design harmonious, of making it look harmonious and deliberate, is through the use of a very planned color scheme. As long as you have even one colored image, you don't have to worry about the color scheme because the colors already exist in that picture. You simply need to isolate them and get them into your color palette by using the picker. And now if I want, I can play around and I can say, okay, I had used the regular magenta for my border. How about I use the butterfly orange? It will be more evident if I use this, right? Here's the butterfly orange. Inside the box, shall I try and use this green that actually looks quite lovely? If I want, I can make it, a little lighter like this. Do I want the inside to also have the orange of the butterfly, or shall I go with this yellow, which I think again also looks quite sophisticated, and so on, right? I can just carry on like this, and already you can see that the design is sort of looking slightly more soothing to the eye because the colors are picked from within. If I want, I can change the frame color, the pink that is in the flower, right? And always remember, on any color, the default is either black or white text. Black and white are neutral. It will depend on the visibility. I'm making this white because that black is not going to be very visible. And again, to a text box, if you press Shift, Alt and Control, you can make the box as well as the lettering much larger at the same time. And I can select this. I don't want it to be Helvetica. I can maybe, let's choose something called Grandjon. Let's see what, oh, that looks quite lovely. And I'm going to leave it here, right? If I want, because it is so big, I choose the A option. Can you see the A option? In text boxes also, the background color can be changed. If I want a label look of some kind, let's pretend that I do. Let's go with this yellowy color. So I have a little yellow label here. Let's center align our text both ways. One is this alignment, the other alignment is available from the text box option over here. This is now a little label, right? That looks in fact quite nice. The whole design is only using colors from the butterfly picture itself. If you want, it's possible to have, if you look at the bottom of my screen, then Quark lets you choose the corner styles for your boxes, and there are 4 options here. One is rounded like this, which hides the text, one is concave like this, and one is beveled like this. So depending on what you're designing, you could in fact also choose a corner style from here, and this is now a lovely little label that we have, right? You could design a series of postcards on your favorite insects or your favorite flowers like so. I'm not liking this corner so much, so I'm just going to make it a regular box, and there's my text sitting in the middle, right? This is quite nice. Now you can imagine you can do butterfly. If I hide the guides, I go to view and I deselect the guides, I throw all this extra information away, and here we have a little beautiful butterfly. If you want a detailed look, if you want a collage look, you can also have fun. Now see what I'm going to do, which is I'm going to bring in another picture box over here. I'm going to bring the picture of the black and white butterfly on top of it. Righto? If you remember this, I fit this to box or I leave it a little bigger, no problem. I open this box up to match the base corner. And now to this grayscale, because it's a grayscale, the color bar, the color palette is giving me 4 options, and I say I don't want any picture box color, I don't want any picture background color, but let's have fun with the black part of this butterfly and let's give it this look. Now can you see the possibilities? With just 2 pictures, you can create the illusion of a very magical kind of illustration. There's another one coming in from here. I can move it down inside this box. I can have it like this. Any of these colors, I can choose this color. I can choose the yellow, the orange, etc. Or a completely different color. I can go with white, right? And here you have a beautiful little postcard. Again, to this, if you wish, you can apply some of these special effects, right? Remember all of this on the color palette, overlay, darken, lighten, and just see. It's very hard to predict what will work or not work. So my advice is to do what I do, which is I go through them from top to bottom and I see what works out. So we have arrived at a lot of new points today, and we can see how with Grayscale TIFF, CMYK TIFF and CMYK PST, we are able to come up with some very interesting graphics, because Quark itself is giving us many kinds of freedom. We can use a cutout and then put our choice of color around it. If necessary, we can put a pattern behind it and so on. We will explore more as we go on. With a grayscale, we have enormous flexibility because we can make it locally transparent in Quark Express. we can change the color, etc., thereby activating the ability to look through the grayscale into the picture at the back. This immediately adds layers to your visual treatment. This gives you a lot of depth, right? And very importantly, we have learnt and seen how the color picker tool lets us, extract colors from a colored image, so that you don't necessarily have to always panic or worry that, oh, maybe I don't have a good sense of color, I don't know with this pink what will work, or the flower is pink, the butterfly is orange, I really don't know what to do, should I go with blue, should I go with yellow? Just choose a variety of colors from your source image, add them to your color palette, and then those colors, those shades will let you, get a very harmonious look with enough variety so that the eye doesn't get bored. Now, remember that the opacity can also be applied to text boxes. Can you see that? Just as the change in color can be applied, right? So, if I want to, I can make it none. I can just change the color only of the text if I want to. I'm sorry, I must choose this text option over here. Yes, see where my cursor is circling? You must highlight the text option in order to access the color of your text. So, I can have in fact yellow text like this. If I think it's looking a bit too dark, I can come here and I can lighten the shade a little bit, right? All of these options are present. I can add cyan, magenta, any of these colors, a shade of the pink. If I feel it's too dark, I can also lighten this further, and there I have it. Another thing that we can do, if I seize it all and I make it much larger like this, okay, coming right in from the border, this is also a certain kind of look. I can highlight this text. I come to my text option on the color bar and I can reduce the transparency of the text. I know you can't tell, but if I move it closer, again this picture is going at the back. So, what I am going to do, bring the text box up, send and bring, I will say bring to front, and even though the text is so large, there is, can you see that the opacity has been affected? So, the text has become in fact slightly see-through, right? It is giving you this interesting effect. Of course, the see-through nature will or will not be more or less effective, remember, depending on the color that you have chosen to put the text into. But I wanted to just remind you, the text itself, you can change the color, you can change the shade, and you can change the opacity. The text box itself also, depending on how you want to use it, you can give it a solid color like I have just given, that's solid. Let's go with the yellow. You can also affect the opacity of the entire box so that you get a wonderful see-through label type effect like this. In our forthcoming lecture, we will continue from this point onward. We are slowly proceeding towards the idea of how, therefore, designers not only work with images on the page, but how they create other objects as well. We have just created a postcard right now. We can also create greeting cards. We can create posters, music albums, social media, visuals, and of course, we can create wonderful book covers, because other than special effects in Photoshop, Quark itself supplies many, many tools to help us in our creativity.
Hi, I'm Chitwan Lalji, a PhD student of Health Economics under the supervision of Dr. Debayan Pakrashi from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Kanpur. In one of my essays, I am interested in understanding the relationship between consumption of fruits and vegetables and various health indicators. Health indicators, both subjective and objective health indicators like mental health, self-assessed health, various measures of blood pressure and various measures of cholesterol. Measures of blood pressure like systolic and diastolic BP, you have your incidence of high BP, MAP and incidence of high MAP. And as far as cholesterol is concerned, I have tried to concentrate more on total cholesterol, good cholesterol and incidence of high cholesterol. Now before I go on to what have been my major contributions and various policy implications, I would like to briefly tell you about the policy initiatives of WHO and various countries. The WHO, that is the World Health Organization, it started with a campaign of 5 a day. That is, you should have 5 portions of fruits and vegetables per day. That would be approximately, you could say, 400 grams of fruits and vegetables. Now, a portion, before we go further, I'll just tell you what exactly is a portion. One portion is equivalent to a medium-sized apple, or one small glass of fruit juice, which is approximately 150 milliliters, and maybe 3 teaspoons of vegetables. So, the WHO went with the 5 a day campaign, which was further taken up by various countries. Countries like UK, Netherlands, Germany, Norway, they adopted the 5 a day policy, while some went for expansionary dietary policies like France, Australia, Canada, Denmark. So, for example, Australia, it went for 2+5 policy, in which it said that you should consume 2 portions of fruits and 5 portions of vegetables per day. And USA went for a policy of fruits and vegetables more matters. That is, you must consume more and more fruits and vegetables. Now, irrespective of these expansionary dietary policies and dietary propagations, it has been found that only 28% of women and 25% of men, they actually meet the recommended dietary norms of 5 a day portion. So, the major contribution of my work is firstly to find an association between fruits and vegetables, whether there exists a relationship between fruits and vegetables and health indicators, and if they exist, whether due to heterogeneity in the data. So, I will be doing it according to age, by gender and by your weight. So, apart from that, I will go for policy recommendations, in which I am basically studying how much fruits and vegetables matter. Apart from that, which type matters more. So, for that, I have taken data from the Health Survey of England. Health Survey of England is an annual survey which takes data, which conducts information regularly on demographic and socioeconomic characteristics. You have your lifestyle behaviors like an individual smokes or doesn't smoke, alcohol consumption, you have your sedentary and physical activities, and you have various health indicators also which have been collected. Before I go on to what exactly is my research, I would like to concentrate more on fruits and vegetables, like what kind of questions were asked in the survey. Questions like, what kind of fresh fruit do you eat? Did you eat any dried fruit yesterday? Don't count dried fruits in cereals, cakes. Apart from that, for vegetables, they asked how many tablespoons of vegetables did you eat yesterday? So, approximately after this whole survey was conducted, data was converted into portions of fruits, and like for example, 3 tablespoons of vegetables is equivalent to 1 portion. So, data was converted and provided to the users, that is us, from the UK Data Health Survey. So, the major contributions of my paper is that I found a strong negative association between intake of fruits and self-assessed health, then various measures of blood pressure like mean arterial pressure, high blood pressure, systolic and diastolic BP, and your total cholesterol. Apart from that, I have found a strong positive association between consumption of vegetables and good cholesterol. So, it is recommended in a way that if you want to control your blood pressure, you must consume more and more fruits. And as far as vegetables are concerned, they impact your good cholesterol. Apart from that, I went in for a falsification test. A falsification test is basically conducted to know whether the model that you have adopted and the conclusions that you are drawing are not spurious. So, if a falsification test is done to know, in a way it is tested by seeing an indicator, a health indicator which is not being impacted by your consumption of fruits and vegetables, and then we see whether there is significant result or not. If there is no significant result, that means your model is good and your results are non-spurious. So what we did is, for falsification test, we took ear complaints and infectious diseases. Now ear complaints, like if you are deaf since birth or you have some kind of imbalance, body imbalance, that is not being impacted by your consumption of fruits and vegetables, and we did find insignificant results. Apart from that, infectious diseases like HIV, AIDS, etc., we found similar insignificant results, indicating that our results are not non-spurious. Apart from that, we went, since there was a lot of heterogeneity in the data, like by gender, by age and by weight, we did the regression analysis. We found results which stated that as far as fruits are concerned, it impacts a male's health more than a female's health. So it is basically said a man should consume more fruits to impact his health, whereas as far as vegetables are concerned, they impact a woman's health more. But this has been only seen as far as cholesterol is concerned, the various measures of cholesterol like total cholesterol, good cholesterol and your incidence of getting high cholesterol. Now after this, we went in for a policy implication, and in the policy implication we tried to find two policy implications: what matters and exactly how much portion matters. So as far as how much portion matters, we have found that on an average 5 or more portions of fruits impact your overall health, that is your self-assessed health, your MAP, your incidence of high MAP and incidence of high BP. But if you want to have a good mental health, so you can optimize your mental health by consuming 3 or 4 portions of fruits as well. And similarly, as far as self-assessed health and total cholesterol is concerned, an individual must consume 4 to 5 portions to optimally have the impact of consumption of fruits. Apart from that, vegetables have had a very little impact on your health. It only impacts your incidence of getting high MAP and high BP, and it's seen that only it impacts when you consume 5 or more portions of fruits. So an optimum consumption of 5 or more portions of fruits and vegetables are recommended, but fruits have a more impact on your overall health, on various measures like self-assessed health, mental health, your various measures of blood pressure and various cholesterol levels. Another thing that we find is which type of fruit matters. It has been seen that all size fruits, they impact your self-assessed health, your systolic and diastolic blood pressure, your mean arterial pressure, your high BP and incidence of getting high MAP and high cholesterol. But we find that as far as frozen fruits or canned fruits are concerned, they help in regulating your incidence of getting high MAP or high BP, but it has a trade-off. That means there is something negative happening. It reduces the good cholesterol in your body. Apart from this, if you have an incidence of getting high cholesterol, it is recommended that you must consume fruit juices, because it has a impact in reducing your probability of getting high cholesterol. And dried fruits, they impact your self-assessed health. As far as vegetables are concerned, very little impact has been seen. It has only been seen in case of portion of salads and its association with self-assessed health. Another thing that they have seen is vegetables in composite, they have an association with good cholesterol. So overall, my research basically says that there is an association between consumption of fruits and vegetables and various health indicators, and it is highly recommended that an individual, in order to be healthy, must consume 5 or more portions of fruits and 5 or more portions of vegetables per day, but fruits have a more impact on your overall health. Apart from that, all size fruits, they have a better impact on your overall health, your mental health, various measures of blood pressure and cholesterol. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gillette Sam and I teach sociology at IIT Kanpur. Today I am going to tell you about the different characteristics of the movement of things around the world that are associated with globalization. we refer to these kind of movements as global flows. Now, the concept of global flows is quite important, and it's important for us to understand the different ways in which these flows might occur. Now, typically, when people talk about the movement of things from one place to another in the context of globalization, they're under the misconception that things tend to flow from abroad into the place where they are living. In a very sort of stereotypical manner, there is this idea that with globalization, much of the movement that occurs is from Western countries into non-Western countries. Now, as sociologists, we know that actually global flows are multidirectional. So, which means that as much as there is a movement of flows from Western countries into non-Western countries, there is an equal amount of movement of flows from one non-Western country to another non-Western country, and in fact, a movement of flows from non-Western countries into Western countries as well. Let's take the example of food, for instance. You may be aware of a type of food which originated actually in China and then goes on to Japan, called ramen. For instance, the popular brand Top Ramen that is consumed in India is an example of ramen. Now, ramen, initially the movement is from China, which is a non-Western country, to Japan, which is another non-Western country. From Japan, this very popular food item travels to Western countries, such as the US, and also more recently to countries in Europe. So there you have a movement from a non-Western country to a Western country. And in fact, now we have very specific types of ramen being consumed in metropolitan centers in India as well. So there's another movement from a Western country to a non-Western country, which is India. So global flows in that sense are multidirectional. A second aspect of global flows is that they could be interconnected. An easy way to think about this would be if you have relatives who are traveling from the US or the UK or Australia, very often you'll see that people request them to carry electronic items with them. They say, oh, can you please get me a laptop, or can you please get me the specific camera lens that I'm looking for. So here you see that the movement of people, which is a person moving from one country to another country, is connected to the movement of technological items as well. So global flows in that sense are interconnected with each other. A third characteristic of global flows is that we could see that they happen in reverse. In fact, they are called reverse global flows. An example of a reverse global flow would be a style of music that you may be very well acquainted with, which is Bhangra. Now, Bhangra music is something that originated, as we know, in the state of Punjab. Now, as you know, Punjab is also a state which has seen a lot of out-migration, not only to other parts of India, but also to other parts of the world. So as people migrated to other parts of the world, they took their music with them. So when people migrated from Punjab to the UK, for instance, they hung on to the music that they were familiar with. So Bhangra moved from little villages in Punjab to the major cities where people from Punjab settled to in the UK. While in the UK, over subsequent generations, this music was transformed. it was not only performed in its original version, but it was also performed with the addition of many different types of beats, which are more familiar to people in the UK. At one point in time, you see that this modified form of Bhangra comes back to India. We're talking about the 1990s, the 2000s. So here you see that that a form of music that originated in India moves out of India to the UK. It is modified a little and then comes back to become extremely popular in India again. So in some ways, this form of music is returning to where it started out, but in a slightly changed manner. We call this kind of movement as a reverse flow.